I've always thought that Life Force was some obscure NES title that everyone seemed to have a copy of in their collection, but needless to say this isn't the case. Like many NES titles, Life Force was actually a port of the arcade game called Salamander, which was released by Konami in 1986. The NES port would arrive later in 1987 and was retitled Life Force in North America, and Life Force Salamander in Europe. The North American version is practically identical to the Japanese Famicom version, save for a few minor changes and forgoes the multiple endings. Further to that, Life Force is actually a spin-off title of the well-known Gradius series of side-scrolling shooters, so it's already coming from a pretty great pedigree. Life Force is one of those games that always manages to crop up somewhere in the myriad of those top 100 best NES title articles strewn all over the net, probably due to the fact that the game is a lot of fun and knows exactly what it is: a side-scrolling shooter offering a simple powering up system, 2-player co-op, and a game mechanic that switches between horizontal and vertical scrolling levels. A pretty cool touch that sets it apart from a lot of other shooters in my opinion. Life Force offers no exposition whatsoever, as you're immediately thrust into the game as soon as you press start, so one would have had to have read the game's cover sleeve or manual to know more beyond it's that weird shooter where you fly around in a body shooting brains and shit. So what exactly is it all about then? Well, according to the back of the box, you've saved the innocent people of Gradius from the vile Bacterians, but now an even deadlier plague has slimed into the neighborhood. That plague is Zelos, a planet-eating alien of the Galactus scale, and you are tasked to destroy it along with the countless obstacles that will be thrown in your way. Luckily you have the Vic Viper at your disposal, as well as the option of teaming up with a friend, or in the case of the narrative, a starfighter friend from the planet Lattice and his rogue British space destroyer. While Life Force appears to take place in the typical space environments, you've got your space rock and debris, your solar flares, space bases and so forth. Given the gargantuan scale of the giant space snake Zelos, and the fact that it's stated that you gotta saw through his guts and blow out his heart, the actual game takes place inside of Zelos despite there being rock formations and inorganic levels and what have you. In contrast, there are plenty parts that look extremely inner body-like, such as pulsating brain matter, veins, and a giant ribcage that somehow leads to a floating death-spewing skull. None of this shit really makes any sense, but this picture shows Zelos inside of a planet type thing, so maybe that's part of his body. The whole thing plays out like a bad acid trip.
What are some golf shoes? Otherwise we'll never get out of this place alive.
But weird shooter where you fly around in a body shooting brains and shit doesn't sound so crazy anymore, does it? Life Force's controls couldn't be simpler. You control your ship with the D-pad, B to fire, and A to power up. The game uses an extremely simple power-up system. Certain enemies drop capsules, you destroy them, you collect the capsules, which come in the form of weapons, shields, speed-ups, and even up to 2 satellite attackers, and you can dictate whether or not to use the power-ups. In this instance, I would collect perhaps a maximum of 2 speed capsules. Any more and the ship becomes a bit too fiddly, and only press B when I land on a capsule I wanted. Ripple laser and missiles being my weapons of choice. Life Force is broken up into 6 terror zones: Cell Stage 1, Volcanic Stage, the Prominence Stage, Cell Stage 2, Temple Stage, and Mechanical City Stage, and each zone alternates between vertical and horizontal views. Enemies come in many shapes and sizes, ranging from space fighters, weapon turrets, monsters, and various environmental factors such as solar flares. Each terror zone is governed by an end-of-level boss referred to as an enemy mayor, which you will need to beat before reaching the final showdown with Zelos' heart and soul. In terms of difficulty, Life Force can be hair-pullingly frustrating at the best of times, and you will die many fucking times, as there are plenty of scenes where the term bullet hell comes to mind. The boss battles, on the other hand, are practically a walk in the park, which I found to be quite unexpected, especially given that a lot of shooters are infamous for their crazy screen-filling boss battles and ludicrous attack patterns, both of which are absent in Life Force. I mean, here I'm just nudging up or down on the D-pad to evade the fireballs, and with this one I am quite literally running circles around him. The graphics are pretty decent for a game released in 1987, and the NES port does a fine job of recreating its arcade counterpart, and should you ever want more Life Force action beyond the NES version, there's the aforementioned arcade original, as well as a sequel called Salamander 2, which was also released for arcade in 1996. Subsequently, the sequel was ported to PSX and Sega Saturn in 1997 as part of the Salamander Deluxe Pack Plus compilation. Hell, there's even an old crappy anime OAV, but it's practically unwatchable, so maybe just stick to playing the games. In closing, Life Force is a great scrolling shooter for the NES and well worth your time even today, and while there are certainly better shooters out there, for me Life Force was a nostalgic blast from the past. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment and subscribe. Until next time, cheers!